Hi, this is Laurie Mangold, and this is month one of the 2024 $5 quilt. And this video is on how to cut your fabrics. And so I'm going to go through each piece and cut it and show you the cutting. So hopefully it will help you get through the first month. If Michelle will bend down to look at the instruction sheet, I'm going to explain how the instruction sheet works. Okay. So tell me when you're ready.
We're good.
Okay, so when you look at the instruction sheets, this indicates the fabrics that you are going to use. Okay, this is the verbiage of what you are going to be cutting. And then this is the diagram for each of the fabrics of how to cut it. So our first fabric is this blue one right here. Okay, and so we need to cut two 5 1/4 inch squares. So the number with the arrows right here indicate what way to put it on your cutting surface. So we are going to put it the long way. So the 6 inches goes this way and the 11 1/2 goes this way. That is the approximate size of the piece of fabric you are given. Okay? So then we need to cut the two 5 1/4 inch squares. So when you have squares, you pretty much have to cut everything the same way. So we're going to first cut the width down to 5 1/4. Now after you have pre-shrunk your fabric, you can see this is distorted. It's not straight. So what we're going to do is take our ruler and we're going to put it down, and we are going to cut what we call clean cut an edge. So we are going to take that off, okay? And now we have notice I didn't line anything else up. We just have a very straight line that we can measure from. Okay, once you have clean cut an edge, you can turn this around, because I'm right-handed, so I want to measure from left to right. And I'm looking for my 5-inch line on my ruler, and then this is 5 1/4, so that's going to be the first tick mark there. So I'm not worried about lining anything up top to bottom. I'm just worried about making sure I've got the 1/4 inch mark, the 5 1/4, all the way up the clean cut edge that I just cut. And now I'm going to cut the other side. So now the width of this piece of fabric is 5 1/4 inches. Now I'm going to turn it on its side, because now I have to make the cuts the other way. This time I'm going to clean cut this edge, but I'm going to make sure that the horizontal line on the ruler is lined up on the edge I just cut. And you can see it's straight, 5 1/4. And I am going to clean cut that edge. Now again, I'm going to turn this over, and now I'm going to line up. And you can use either your straight ruler or your square ruler for this. I'm going to, again, make sure this is on, a horizontal line is on the bottom. My core 5 1/4 is right here. And I'm going to cut one. And then I'm going to move that over. And again, I'm being very careful. I got this straight, I got the 5 1/4, I have that one straight, and I'm going to cut this. And now there are my two 5 1/4 inch squares. Okay, so that's step number one. I'm going to set those aside, and the next thing we cut, if you look at this, we have 4 3-inch squares. So again, this is essentially it's 7 by 7, so it doesn't matter which way you put it down. So we are going to do exactly the same thing. We are going to clean cut one edge. I'm going to flip it over and use the side, and I'm going to measure 3 inches. And I'm going to measure another 3-inch and cut that. Okay, so now I have two 3-inch strips, and I like to do what I call power cutting, and I'm going to stack these on top of each other. And then I am going to now, again, because I'm going the other direction, I'm using my horizontal line to make sure I have this straight, and I can use both lines on the ruler. And then I'm going to scooch this over just a tad, and I'm going to clean cut this edge. Okay. Now I can flip this over and I am going to find my 3-inch line. And this time I've got 3, 3, 3. Make sure all of those are perfectly lined up. And I'm going to make that cut. So I have 2 3-inch squares, and now I'm going to get the remaining 2. Notice that I am not using the lines on my mat to do my cutting. I only do that if my pieces are bigger than my ruler can handle, because your ruler is always going to be more accurate than your mat. So there are 4 3-inch squares. Now, the next one we're going to cut is number 3. I recommend we're going to cut it down. We need a 2 by 12 and a half. I did not put the 2 on the top of your instructions. You may want to add that, but we're going to cut this strip down to 2 inches wide. It doesn't matter how long it is because we are going to strip piece it. So all we're going to do is cut it down to 2-inch wide. So again, we're going to clean cut one side, and then I am going to flip it over and I'm going to measure 2 inches. There's my 2-inch number right there. And I'm going to make sure it's straight on the edge. I have 2 inches and I am going to cut the rest off, and now I have a 2-inch strip. Because I'm strip piecing, which means the piece that goes with this I'm going to sew together and then I'm going to cut pieces off of it, I don't have to worry about its length because it will take care of itself when we trim it. Okay? Now, last but not least in the cutting, this is the one that is important to pay attention to. The first thing is we need 11 and a half this way and 13 and a half this way. Instinctively, I put it down wide, but this one we're going to cut tall. So I have to turn this so that my 11 and a half is this way and 13 and a half is this way. Then these tell you how wide to cut strips off of it. So I'm going to cut a 3-inch strip, a 5 1/4 inch strip, and then a 2-inch strip. Once I have the strips cut, I'm going to come back and cut these pieces. I'm going to leave the first one a strip, cut 2 5 1/4 inch squares. I'm going to cut 2 2-inch squares, which I'm then going to, I wrote this in, we're going to trim those down to 1 1/2 by 2, and then we're going to cut 4 3-inch pieces off of there. And so this is kind of easy to mix up. So first just do the top things and then go back and do the pieces. But your written are going to guide you also. Okay? So the first one I'm going to cut is a 3-inch strip. So we are going to clean cut an edge to measure from. Okay? I'm going to flip it over and I need a 3-inch strip. So I find my 3-inch line. It's right there, and I'm going to cut that, and I'm going to set that aside because I'm going to have to cut some more off of it. Then I need a 5 1/4 inch strip, so I'm going to find my 5 1/4, which I have it lined up all the way, and I'm going to cut that one. And then I need a 2-inch strip, so I'm going to find my 2-inch line and line that up on that edge. And if you can't get it to be straight, just clean cut it a little again. There's my 2-inch, and then I have that ready to go. Okay? All right, so I'm going to set those aside, and I'm going to go back to the first strip that we cut, which was 3 inches. This is going to be left the same length because we are going to strip piece it with this one. So we're just going to put those two together and set that aside. The second piece we cut at 5 1/4, we need to cut 2 5 1/4 inch squares. So what I'm going to do is I am going to clean cut the edge, and I'm making sure that everything lines up at 5 1/4 before I cut anything. That one looks much better. Okay. Now what I wanted to show you, I can cut those two with this ruler. But I also wanted to show you, if you wanted to use your square ruler, and we look at the ruler, if we come down from this side right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we get to 5, then we have these little marks for our 1/4 and 1/2 inches. So if I want to use my square ruler, I can find that tick mark for the 5 1/4, and it says 1/4 right here. It has the 1/4 lined and 1/4 right here. I can see I'm on the 5, and then I can use that to cut this, and I know that it's square. So yes, I could cut it with my strip cutter, my ruler, but sometimes when you're doing 1/4 inches and you're doing a square, it's easier to grab your square ruler to do that. So there are my 2 5 1/4 inch squares. Now it says I need 2 2-inch squares. So I'm going to find my 2-inch line. I can go ahead and use this ruler right here. I'm at 2 inches. And this is why I said that you should write the 1 1/2 by 2. I need to first cut 2 2-inch squares. Excuse me, this is already 2 inches wide. So the next, I need them to be 2 by 1 1/2. So now I'm going to look for my 1 1/2 line, which is right here. And I can kind of, that's 1 1/2 square. Sorry, don't want to do that. I need a 1 1/2 by 2. So this direction is already 2. So I find my 1 1/2 inch line, and I go ahead and I cut that. And then I cut another one. I don't think probably my instructions on this one were as clear as they could have been, but so we need 2 1 1/2 by 2s. But just know that I go ahead and write over here if you want 1 1/2 by 2, but it's also right here in your instructions that you're going to get out of the bottom of that piece. The last strip that we are going to work with, we cut it at 2 inches wide, but we need 4 3-inch pieces off of that. So we are going to, and I'm going to go ahead and go back to my straight ruler, and I am going to clean cut the edge, and now I'm going to measure 3 inches 4 times. So again, when I do that, I want to make sure that my 3-inch line is lined up. You know what? My strip is not very straight right there. So I'm going to recheck that. It's supposed to be 2 inches wide. So let me check and see what's going on. Yeah, my ruler must have slipped when I cut. So if I do that, I can fix it like that. I have a lump right here in my table because I steamed something and I managed to warp my things, so don't use your iron on your cutting mat. Okay, so we are going to do 3 inches now. That's much better. So there's 1. There's 2. There's 3, and 1 more. And there's 4. Much better. Okay, so just to review, I have 4 2 by 3-inch rectangles. I have 2 1 1/2 by 2-inch rectangles, and I have 2 5 1/4-inch squares, and I have a 3-inch strip that I cut off of there. So that was that color. Color 3 was a 2-inch strip. We're going to strip piece these, so I put those together. These are my 4 3-inch squares, and these are my 2 5 1/4-inch squares, which are going to match up here. So once I have it all cut, I can move to the next page and start doing the assembly. Hopefully that made sense, and you can watch that. If you're new to rotary cutting, just take your time. And if you need some extra help, come on into the store and we'll show you how to do it.